إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا ونبينا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد صلاة دائمة مقبولة تعدي بها أن حقه العظيم نحمده ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا تكونوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الأمين المكين الكريم ونحن على ذلك لمن الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين غوث اعظم بمنے بے سروں ساما مدد قبلہ دی مدد کعبہ ایما مدد قادری نعرائے غوث اعظم زنم رمز الشیخ احمد رضا خان قطب عالم زنم سیدی یا مرشدی شاہ مصطفیٰ خان زندہ باد مسلک سرکار اعلی حضرت زندہ باد یا الہی مسلک احمد رضا خان زندہ باد حفظ ناموس رسالت کا جو ذمہ دار ہے سیدی یا مرشدی شاہ مصطفیٰ خان زندہ باد حامل فیض رضا مصطفیٰ امداد کن صلی اللہ علی النبی الامی وآلہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم صلاة والسلام علیک یا سیدی یا سندی یا حبیبی یا طبیبی یا رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم وعلى آلک واصحابک یا رحمة للعالمین. All praise due to Almighty Allah. Durood and salams upon the most perfect, exalted and glorified of Allah's creation, Sayyiduna wa Mawlana Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Peace, blessings and salutations upon the Anbiya Kiraam, Ahle Bayt Athar, Sahaba Kiraam, Khalifa Rashidin, Tabain, Tabain, A'immai Mujtahideen, Awliya Kamilin, and all those who follow the path until the last day. We thank Almighty Allah through His infinite mercy and through the wasila of Rasul Akram, Noori Mujassam sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who are affording us the opportunity to congregate for Salatul JUMMAH and to prostrate in His most exalted court. Before continuing, let us all direct our hearts, our thoughts and our minds towards the holy and the sanctified court of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and in doing so let us collectively recite the Durood Sharif. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Mawlana Muhammad وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وأصحابه وبارك وسلم صلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا حبيبي يا طبيبي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آلك وأصحابك يا رحمة للعالمين. کیا بات رضا اس چمنستان کرم کی زہرا ہے کلی جس میں حسین اور حسن پھول. الحمدللہ ثم الحمدللہ. By the grace of Almighty Allah and the mercy of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have entered the new Islamic year Muharram 1445 Hijri. 1445 years have passed since the migration, the hijrat of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Makkatul Mukarramah to Madinatul Munawwarah. And in this year 1445 Hijri, we remind ourselves always that when the Kuffar's new year comes, they say, and I say this always, that they make resolutions to make their lives better, and how they do it by starting with sharab and doing a whole lot of guna. And when our new year comes, we start it by remembering Almighty Allah. We start by reminding ourselves of the great sacrifice that was given for the deen of Allah, and all the sacrifices that were given for the protection of Allah's deen and protection of the commands of Allah and His beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So for us, the beginning of a year is very different, and this is how it should be. It should be for the pleasure of Allah. When we start anything, we should start it for the sake of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anything good, we should start it for the pleasure of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu ta'ala alaihi wasallam. The month of Muharram, when it arrives, it comes with all the blessings of that year. And it reminds us that we have been blessed with yet another year in our lives. It reminds us that Allah has given us yet another year in our lives. And it reminds us that we should make shukr for the year that has passed. And it reminds us also that if you have passed the last year in guna and in wrongdoing, then you have still the opportunity to rectify yourself. We still have the chance to make ourselves better. It is hadith of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the gist of the hadith, that do not wish for maut. Do not, some people say, no, when you go through troubles and difficulties, you say, I wish I were dead. But the beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, do not say that. Do not wish for that. Because for a person who is sinful, long life means that he's getting the opportunity to make tawbah from that and live a better life before he dies. And for a person who is pious, a longer life means he has more life to spend in the love of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and in obeying Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he'll increase his spiritual state before he leaves the world. You should rather say, oh Allah, when the time of my death comes, rather than saying, oh I wish for that. Whenever my death time, the time of my death comes, then oh Allah, take me with Iman. Let me leave the world with Iman. This is what we should do. So that was just for us to understand that when the new year comes, when Muharram comes, when the Islamic year starts, or any other month of the year starts, you should just remind yourself that I am still alive. By Allah's mercy, I am still alive. Why is this life here? Why is this life here? This life is here so that we may spend it in the ibadat of Almighty Allah. We may spend it to become better Muslims. We may spend it to become spiritually more inclined towards the way of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to draw closer in the court of Almighty Allah. And if you look at the lives of the companions of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and if you look at the lives of the Ahle Bayt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the normal family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the beloved companions of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will realize that how much they valued every day in their life. Every single day was valuable to them, and it was not valuable because of how much they earned in that day. That is a blessing from Allah. Your rizq is from Allah. Everything's from Allah. You cannot earn more than Allah wills for you to earn. You make the effort, but Allah will give you what He wills. But your aim and objective should be to strive to earn that which is halal. Okay? So, if you look at the lives of the companions and the Ahle Bayt, Ridwanullahi ta'ala minhum ajma'in, you will find that they valued every single day in their life. Why? Because they knew that this day, once gone, will not come back. It will not come back. If you miss salah in this day, you can make the qaza of that salah, but you will not get that salah back. You will not get the value of that salah which you lost. Why? Because that's gone. It's past. They knew this, they understood this. And they knew that every day that you spend in the love of Allah, every day that you spend pleasing your Creator and pleasing your beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that day took you closer to your Creator Almighty Allah. That's why they valued that day. वो एक दिन जो है आपको अल्लाह की बारगाह से और करीब कर देता है. It makes you closer in the court of Almighty Allah. That one day that you spend for the pleasure of Allah. Now think, instead of spending that day in the pleasure of Allah, in the ibadat of Allah, in remembering the pious servants of Allah, if a man spends it in guna, what did that one day do? Think about it in that sense. What did that one day do? Did it take you closer to your Rabb, or it take you further away from your Rabb? Now think, if a person spends an entire year in that hal, how far he has become from the mercy of Allah, how distant he has become from the obedience of Allah. And a person who spends that entire year remembering his Rabb and making ibadat, how close and how near and how dear he becomes in the court of Almighty Allah. Ye baat sochne ki hai. It is something that we should ponder upon. That even leave a day, every minute that you spend in guna, that minute is distancing you from your Rabb. It's taking you nearer to shaitan. Every minute that you spend in the remembrance of your Rabb is taking you nearer to your Rabb, away from the traps of shaitan. That is why if you look at the lives of the Sahaba Ikram, the companions of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will find that these companions of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not care about the worth of this dunya. Even if some of them had everything, they did not care about the worth of this dunya. They cared about the akhirat. They cared about what is going to happen when we leave this world. Today we are only worried about what happens while we're in this world. We are not thinking about the hereafter. And if you think about the battle of Karbala and the sacrifice of the awlad of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they didn't do this for dunya. They did it for the protection of the deen of Almighty Allah, because they knew this is beneficial for the akhirat. This is beneficial for the akhirat. Last week I talked about HAZRAT Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu. And I told you that I will discuss a bit more about him, but the month of Muharram has started now. The time to discuss the Shahadat has started now, but still I will speak about HAZRAT Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, because you cannot discuss the Ahle Bayt without the Sahaba, and you cannot discuss the Sahaba without the Ahle Bayt. They both go hand in hand. They both go hand in hand, and they are both very beloved to us. So Hazrat, if you look, and I said if you look at the value of life, because we're talking about life, Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Hassan, Hazrat Sayyidina Imam Hussain, all the companions of the beloved Nabi, the Ahle Bayt of the beloved Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they all knew the value of life. Because do you know it is farz upon you to protect your life? It is an obligation upon a Muslim to protect his life. So why did they just give their lives when it was an obligation to protect those lives? Because to protect your life from enmity, to protect your life from somebody who's trying to harm you, to protect your life from somebody who's taking your wealth away, protect your wealth, all this is a duty upon you. You are duty bound. But when you have to do it for the sake of Allah's deen, you give your life, then in that case your life doesn't come first, the deen of Allah comes first. The deen of Allah comes first, and that life which you give at that time is called a qurbani. It is called a sacrifice. Why? It is for the pleasure of Almighty Allah. But what has happened is that we have taken the world to be primary. We have taken this dunya to be everything, and that is why, whether it's Muharram or it's Zilhijj, to many people it makes no difference. They don't even remember. Half of the people won't tell. If you ask half of the people today, they don't know what Islamic year it is. Ask half of them about it, the month of Muharram, it is the month of Muharram, they don't understand what it is. What is the reason for that? The reason is because we have lost ourselves in the dunya to such an extent that we have forgotten our identity. Our grand duty is to protect our identity as Muslims. Why is it that in Sweden they are trying to burn the Quran? They've burnt one, they're trying again. Why are they doing this? Do you think they had the audacity, somebody would have had the audacity to do this in the zaman of Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu? In the zaman of the companions and the tabi'in and the tabi'in? Why they didn't do it? Because they knew this was the strength of the iman of the Muslims in that time. That this could never happen. They have tested the waters and seen that the Muslims now don't care. They just make a little noise and khalas. What should we learn from all of this? When the kuffar are doing this, what do you and I learn from it? Yes, you protest, you do this, you say you dislike it, yes. But what should you be doing? You should be living your life in accordance with that Quran which they want you to become distant from. You should be living your life in accordance with the sunnah of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is very, very important. This is something that we need to understand. Hazrat Sayyiduna Umar Farooq radiallahu anh, Allahu Akbar. That Umar Farooq, I told you, his jalal and his haibat upon the people. But yet I explained last week, he was that personality that would go in the darkness of night and clean the house of an old blind woman. Why did he do it? What was this? That was a lesson to us. That do not think if you are in the position of power, then you must abuse that power. Do not think when you are in the position of power, You should only allow people to come and humble themselves before you. But go and humble yourselves before those who need you also. This was a lesson that Hazrat Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu taught us. It's a very important lesson. You know, once it is reported that Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu, and I mentioned this once before some time back, and I'm repeating it for understanding. Once Hazrat Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu was walking with his companions, with those who were around him, and they passed an area where garbage would be thrown, where people dumped dirt, a garbage dump we would call it for understanding purpose. They passed an area where there was a whole lot of dirt dumped. Hazrat Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu anh stopped there for a little while. Where? Near a garbage dump. He stopped there for a while, and his friends and his companions, etc., those who were with him at that time, his associates, they were amazed by why Hazrat Umar Farooq is stopping near a dump. And naturally, human fitrat, they were disgusted by the odor, bad smell that was emanating from the garbage dump, from the dirt that was rotting there. And they were uncomfortable because of the smell. Anybody would be uncomfortable by a bad smell. Okay? So Hazrat Umar Farooq is walking with his companions, and he always did things to teach lessons to those who were around him. He was a very wise personality, Hazrat Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu anh. So he takes them, and then suddenly while walking, he stops near this dump of dirt. Umar Farooq stops near the garbage dump. And as I'm saying that, the bad smell was emanating from there. Terrible smell. Disgusting odor. And the companions that were with Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu anh, obviously they were not very comfortable with that bad smell. And whatever gestures they made because of the smell, maybe they covered their mouths, maybe they covered, whatever they would have done. But Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu anh saw this. The second Khalifa of Islam, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu anh, when he saw this, and he also could obviously sense the smell that was there. He looked at them and he said, "Do not forget, this is your dunya." Allah. Next to the garbage dump. What did he say? This is your dunya. This is your dunya. In other words, this is your love for the materialistic world. It's like this dump. It's like this garbage. This is your dunya. It is like this. He said, this is your dunya. This is your love for the materialistic world, which you love and you desire so much. This is the hal of it. This is the hal of it. And for which you are so greedy that you praise this dunya so much. Subhanallah, think about it. This one statement of Umar Farooq when he walked past that garbage dump, and the odor was so bad, the stench was so bad that everybody with him was uncomfortable. But he took that and he gave them an example. He said, this is your dunya. This is your dunya, the thing that you love so much, that you die for, that you compromise Allah's deen for, that you do whatever you do for. You praise this world so much. What was Hazrat Sayyidina Umar telling us? He was explaining to us that this mundane world is nothing. This dunya is nothing. On the day of Qiyamah, this dunya will come to you in the form of an ugly, ugly woman. As some narrations have said. It will come in the form of you and try to attract you. You will run away from it. It will be something that you don't want. But this is the thing, your whole life you ran behind. Our entire lives we ran behind. The month of Muharram is here. How much of time can we sacrifice in this month? How much of time can we sacrifice? Leave the other months. I'm talking about the first month. First month of the Islamic year. How much time can we sacrifice for the pleasure of Allah? For the pleasure of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How many of us can sit down and let's listen to some discussion about the Shahada Karbala? Let us think about what sacrifice they gave. Today we can't sacrifice our time. Where are you going to sacrifice your life for the deen of Allah? We can't sacrifice our wealth. We can't sacrifice anything materialistic. Do you know why? Because we have fallen in love with the dunya. And Hazrat Umar Farooq said that your dunya is like that dump that's giving off that foul odor. That if you do not take care of your dunya, if you do not take care of your dunya, this is what it will be to you in the akhirat. No use to you. No matter what you do, it will not be able to benefit you in your qabr. It will not be able to benefit you in the akhirah. We do so much, we cause so much of nuqsan for the sake of the dunya. Think about it, look at the lives of the shuhada. Look at HAZRAT Sayyidina Imam Hussain radiallahu anhu. Look at what they didn't do for the protection of Allah's religion. Look at how they treated each other. Today, we have become so lost in this dunya that Sayyidina Umar taught us the condition of it. We are so lost in it that we cannot even give adab to our own parents. Look at how people treat their parents today. And you may find me repeating this most often in my lectures. And the reason I do that is because in the kind of work that we do, in community and in counseling and in speaking to youth, etc., and parents, we are finding that parents are complaining always and telling us, Maulana, I don't know what to do with these kids. The same parent that is working hard to make sure the child has bread on his table and make sure that he has a roof over his head, and the mother is making effort to make sure that he has cooked and the best food on his plate or on her plate. The very same children have no value for those parents. They do not care about them. They do not bother, especially when they have come into their old age. They feel that they are a burden. Remember, if you take your parents as a burden, one day when your children grow up, you will be double the burden. You will be double the burden. Remember that this dunya is only temporary. It is a transit. Why do you want to make the transit feel? Why do I want to make the transit feel like it is our permanent residence? We have come from the womb of our mothers into this dunya. 9 to 10 months, almost 40 weeks, and those who go stay more longer in the wombs of their mothers by Allah's command. For all that time she nurtures and she cares for a child. But when the person comes in dunya and reaches the age where he is able to do things by himself, he tries to feel that he feels that he has done his duty to his parents. Learn from the house of Bibi Fatima Zahra radiallahu ta'ala anha. Learn from the house of Imam Hussain radiallahu anhu. When we talk about Karbala, when the month of Muharram comes, the sacrifice of the Shahada Karbala is very great. But with that, do not forget everything else in their lives that they taught us. Do not forget the manners that they taught us. Do not forget the ethics that they taught us. If we forget these things, then what is the use talking about the Shahadat? When you cannot follow them, when you cannot listen to what they commanded. Today we talk about all these things, but we have forgotten our responsibilities. We speak about Hazrat Umar radiallahu anh, but have we not remembered the words of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anh? Today, I'm going to end with some important words of Hazrat Umar. I'm going to share some words of Hazrat Umar with you. And when time wills, when Allah wills and time permits, inshallah, then one day I will discuss those words in further detail. Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Sayyidina Muhammad bin Shahab radiallahu anhu reports that Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu said, do not engross yourselves in futile activities. Simple term, very simple discussion. Do not engross yourself in futile activities. In other words, what is futile? Useless. No benefit to you. Which are the futile activities? Today, a person will spend his time on social media. I spoke about this the other week. Our children, ask our friends who are opticians, they'll tell you. Ask our doctors, they'll tell you. They have never seen so many children wearing glasses like they saw in this zamana. What is the reason for that? Because when in the past, when the child would trouble at home, the parents got the child occupied in something else, or they sat with the child. Today when the child troubles, a 2-year-old is being given a cell phone in his hand or her hand. And you proudly say, you know what, Maulana, you won't believe it, my kid can go to that thing without even knowing how to read. You shouldn't be proud of that, you should be crying about that. Because it means that our children have become entrapped by the Western ideology from that age of 2 and 3 years old. We have given these things in their hands rather than sitting with a child. And you know what the parents used to do at that age before? When the child would make trouble or give them taklif, they would sit with them and they would read qasidas to them. They would read Naat Sharif to them. They would read Quran in the presence of the children. How many people do this today? Because our time is wasted We say we can't have enough time. But the same ones of us, those of us that say we can't find time, we spend hours on end on social media. Your children spend hours on end gaming. And then you want to know why my children are gone off track. You are sponsoring that destruction. We are sponsoring the destruction of our children. That is why when Umar radiallahu anh said, do not engross yourself in futile activities. What did he mean? Anything that takes you away from Allah. Anything which takes you away from Allah. That time which is spent away from the remembrance of Allah is bekar. It is futile. It is not going to benefit you. What else did he say? He says, keep away from your enemies. Simple statement, keep away from your enemies. Who are your enemies? Today your enemy is somebody who you're jealous of half the time. Because he got something and you want it. That becomes your enemy. Your enemy is that person who told you, don't do this, it's against the Shariah. Maulana is the biggest enemy. Yeah, because we tell you what we need to tell you. Okay? It's too difficult, too bitter to swallow this pill. We make those our enemies. But our enemies are those who are the enemies of Allah's deen. The Bad Mazhabs, the Wahhabi, the Razvi, all these Bad Mazhabs, Sulh Kullis. These are the enemies. Your enemies are those who distance you from the deen of Allah. Your enemies are those who distance you from your parents in the dunya. You find the youngsters don't want to talk to their mother and father. They're upset. 2-3 days they don't talk. We hear about it. Doing this, doing that. Why? Because their friends are telling them this is the right way how to handle things. That friend who gives you advice to distance yourself and disrespect your mother and your father is not your friend, is your enemy. He's not your enemy, he's not your friend. If he is your friend, he will teach you the adab of your parents. That person who distances you from salah is not your friend. In times of salah, instead of going to salah, he's telling you, let's go and do gaming. At the time of salah, let's go and do this. Let's go for a football match. At the time of salah, let's go and watch television, ma'adallah. Then that person is not your friend, he is your enemy. He is distancing you from the ibadat of Allah. So that's why Hazrat Umar radiallahu anh, what did he say? Keep away from your enemies. So first you need to recognize who are your enemies. Today we take those people who advise us to be our enemies. Those people who are trying to guide us to be our enemies. And those people who are leading us astray, we say that these are our friends. Why? Because they're telling us what we want to hear. In this zamana, this is the problem. We love those who tell us what we want to hear, not what they should be telling us. And this is destructive to our dunya, and it is destructive to our hereafter as well. And what did he say? Something? He said, I'm going to end with this last statement. He said, always take advice in all your matters from those who fear Allah. Very important. Person is sitting with a sharabi to take advice on deen. A person is sitting with a person who spends his life in guna to take advice. He said, take advice from those who fear Allah. Take advice from the pious people. Why? Because when they advise you, if they fear Allah, they will advise you absorbed in the fear of Allah. They will give you that advice by which they won't earn the wrath of Allah. And then you won't earn the wrath of Allah. So these are very important lessons that Sayyidina Umar Farooq radiallahu anh taught us. These are very important things that we should think about. The month of Muharram is here. It's the new year. You have another new year in your life. I have another year in my life, if Allah wills. This could be the last day of everybody's life, if Allah wills. But He gave us to see that new year. Did we make shukr when this year came? How many of us read 2 rakats and say, oh Allah, I thank you that you have given me this year. You've kept me alive with Iman. How many people do it? It is something that we have to think about. And thus I said, you have to go back into the lives of the companions of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have to go into the lives of the Ahle Bayt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have to go into the lives of the pious servants of Allah to understand the value of your life. Because every moment that you and I spend against the command of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we will be held accountable for it in the Akhirat. We will have to give account for it. Today we are more worried about giving account to dunya. We are more worried about those that we need to pay. Yes, you need to pay them. But we're more stressed about that. What about that which you owe in the court of Almighty Allah? Look at the lives of the Sahaba. Look at what Hazrat Umar said. Go on thinking about that word. That the dump where dirt is put and which has a terrible stench is your dunya. If you don't look after. And if you don't take care of the condition of your dunya. Allah Ta'ala keep us with Iman. Let us leave this world with Iman. Those who are ilallah, grant them shifa, kamil, sehat, ajil. Those that have passed away in Ahle Sunnah, Allah exalt them in Jannat al-Na'im. Special dua for the mother of Hazrat Mufti Shuaib Raza Ali Rahma, whose mother passed away 2 days ago. May Allah exalt her in Jannatul Firdaus. And may Allah give their family sabr jameel. We make dua that all those that are going through any calamities and difficulties, Allah remove them from the calamities and the difficulties. And may we be able to take complete benefit of this new year, Islamic year 1445 Hijri. A reminder to you before I end that I've been delivering nightly lectures since the 1st of Muharram after Salatul Isha at Imam Mustafa Raza Research Center, 28 Clayton Road. Those of you that want to join are most welcome to join. 28 Clayton Road, quarter to 7. Inshallah, we have Isha Salah there. You can even come to Masjid and Isha, because the Masjid has a program after Maghrib Salah. A brief program after Maghrib Salah, and then we have the lectures at the center after Isha Salah. So take benefit both places if you can. Short program for an hour or so, and it will be continuing for the entire nights of Muharram, inshallah. The second night lecture was last night. So I'm inviting you to come and join, inshallah. Sacrifice some time for the pleasure of Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and come and take benefit. And the reason we do these programs and we do these things, not so that people come and say, oh, I'm going there by Maulana, I'm sitting with Maulana. No, it's not about that. It's about even I'm getting the opportunity to be part of earning sawab and sharing that which strengthens our faith and strengthens our iman and our love for Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So come, bring your children as well, because we need to allow our children to learn history, because there are those people who are giving misinformation about the history of Islam, especially those Razvis and those people who are the agents in this country, are misconstruing and are distancing people from the Sahaba Kiraam of the beloved Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So come and learn. Let's be part of this, and inshallah for your women folk, it's relayed live as well, audio live. So you can ask Maulana Ahmad Sabir or Zahir Bhai for the links, and they'll give that to you. If you can't come, if your families want to listen, your women folk want to listen, they can listen from the comfort of their homes as well, inshallah. Allah keep us with iman, let us leave this world with iman. Wa ma lil balagh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.